if you're watching this as part of the playlist on carving this wedding plate design, you'll likely notice this is actually a different plate altogether and a different style of plate than the rest of the videos in this playlist. And that's because the first plate that I was carving and videotaping during this old world style part of that, the video was out of focus for the entire thing, so I wasn't able to use any of that video. But I got a recent commission to use that same pattern, so figured I'd use this opportunity as I carve it a second time then to show you that portion. So that's what this is. And unfortunately, something I didn't anticipate with this different plate design is it actually causes some issues with this pattern here as I do this large chip here up against the rim. I'll show you more about that once I get to carving that section. Wasn't a big deal in that last chip, but trying to do it all in one and go to that full depth was didn't quite behave as I would have preferred, so I'm going to go ahead and take out some smaller chips here before I do the rest of it. And just like with traditional chip carving, the old world style, you can run into that same issue of not getting enough depth on your first pass and having to make multiple passes with the knife, but not a big deal. So here you'll see with this rim on the previous plate, I've got the names actually between the rim and the old world chip, which brings it away, and so I had more room for this knife, which is the standard knife I use for chip old world style. But with this one, I don't have enough room, and it goes up against the rim, and I was having difficulty when I did this first side. But I'll show you how I solved that in a little bit here. So here, as I start to try to do this, you'll see, I don't want to cut into that rim. So I switched to using this skew knife, which you can see has a lot shorter blade than the other one, which solved my problem of the blade running up against the rim there. But while you can see this has the long blade and the knife hits the rim, this is nice and skinny of a handle here, so I can lay it down flat. But this knife originally was this shape, and so you can see I modified it. I cut this down to make that a lot slimmer, and what that did is allowed me to get the knife at a lower angle, closer to the wood, before cutting into it, because before, with this being so thick as it was really lifting up and digging down more than I wanted to. So trimming that up allows us to lay flat. I was able to make it work for doing those cuts. And so I do still run up against this, and one thing I need to be aware of and careful about is, because this knife kind of is running against the rim, I want to make sure to not dent or scratch that wood, which I'm going to be, that would show up on the final carving, so need to make sure, careful about that. So this is a bit of a finicky process here doing this one. Doesn't go quite as smooth and normal as I would like because of that. So I kind of have to take a bunch of passes and kind of different gentle angles, and to complicate everything on this particular chip, it transitions the grain direction, so I have to kind of come at it from this way and then switch and come from that way. Because of that grain direction. So just one more complication on this particular chip. I generally like to be more minimalistic in my wood carving tools. I'm not real big on having all kinds of different knives and tools for this and that. I like to kind of just use one or two knives to get all my work done, and be either more creative in how I use them, or maybe do a little bit simpler carving to keep my toolkit down. But in this case, it worked out very well for me to have this other option, kind of a emergency situation, as I considered quickly going and buying another one of this knife, but with a shorter blade length. But I think this one should work well enough for me in this case. So you see, as I'm coming around, if I come straight, I still run into that rim, but as I kind of rotate the knife, I give myself a little bit of extra room to play with around that angle. And it starts to take shape here. Just gotta get a little bit more rounded at the bottom of this circle here. One more pass to clean up some of this black outline. So you can see it's maybe not quite as clean, not quite as flat, I don't think, as I would like it to be able to do one pass with the knife, but I think overall it's definitely a suitable finish and workaround for what was a really tricky situation in the middle of carving this project. That second cut got a little bit deeper. You can take a second pass here to level out that crease at the bottom so the two chips meet nice and flush. So again here, as I do these outside sections of these leaves, I'm going to have that same issue running up against the rim. So I'll switch to using this knife, and hopefully I can kind of match the effect of that one using different knives on the same element here. Always a little tricky trying to come from opposite directions on the same cut to make sure they line up, and you see they didn't quite perfectly. Wasn't too bad. I can finish that up to even those out. But again, with that rim driving this knife up now, that second side went deeper, so I'll have to come back and even this one out. In this situation, as the grain changes direction, one thing I find helpful is to kind of keep the tip of the knife mostly where it is, and then actually rotate the knife blade so that it's pushing in more than slicing through. And that helps, at least I find, preserve the integrity of the cut and the grain a little bit better. So here again, kind of mangle it a little bit. The two cuts didn't match up, but it's okay. I have to go deeper on this side anyway, which should help with that. Alright, I'll probably call that one good for now. Don't want to take too many passes and risk making it worse.